This is a man's world. I am so sorry for trying to sing. That will not happen again. Hey, y'all, what's up, man? In this episode, we got William Matthews and we got Be Real, and we're going to be talking about what it means to be a man in today's society, gender roles, toxic masculinity, and everything in between. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out the song at the end of the episode. Go to MANWELL'S.com for all things merch, music, all the good stuff, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And here is Nights at the Round Table. And welcome to another episode of Nights at the Round Table. It's your boy, Man Weezy. We got Be Real and our beautiful friend, as always, yes. Willie Matt.
Also known as William Matthews.
William Matthews.
The artist, the advocate, the poet.
Yeah.
The soon-to-be author. The activist. These are all A's, huh? I said poet. Never mind.
These are all real things. These are all real things that Willie Matt is. You know what I'm saying? Hey, man, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
You did. Our last episode was really amazing that we ended up doing and got a lot of good feedback. So we say, hey, let's bring this guy back. He has stuff to say.
I appreciate coming back on this podcast because you guys are all my friends. So
this is what we do. This is what we do anyways. You know what I'm saying? So today we're going to be talking about what it means to be a man. But for those of y'all who can see, because we're talking about what it means to be a man, I don't know why, but we're doing whiskey.
Men drink whiskey. That's why. I can judge a man by the type of whiskey he drinks.
Really?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're doing Jim Beam.
Yeah. So
because it's all we had.
Yeah, don't take any judgment there. I know it was funny because we're talking a little bit covering of what it means to be a man, and the image of you get is this guy smoking cigars, like drinking whiskey,
in a wood cabin.
Yeah, like in his office, in his spare time or whatever. Like I remember when I started watching Mad Men. It's like every single episode.
Is that good? I wanted to watch it, but
it's a great show.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
And at that time, I wasn't drinking whiskey, but I felt like I was like, man, these guys are drinking so much whiskey.
I'm not really a whiskey guy, but I'm gonna try it right now. Let's see.
You're not really an alcohol guy.
What do you mean?
Like you've grown to become. I mean, when I first met you, you were like scared to taste. You were like, I just won't be caught slipping in sin. And what if?
You're right.
That's true. And you first met me too.
That is true about both of you.
Actually, the first drink of alcohol I've ever had was actually in this home.
Really?
Yes, really.
Now I blame
glass
Ange and Manny for your spiritual downfall.
Man, shoot.
we were the gateway.
People probably think it was me. It wasn't me because I told you, I was like, let me take you out for your first beer whenever you do decide to drink. And you never did. And so I was always mad, like, wait, you're drinking now? Like, you didn't that was the whole, like, promise.
I don't like beer.
Yo, but here's the thing.
Because you haven't had good beer. Real men drink beer.
Take me out for a good beer.
We will go. Yeah, we will go beer tasting. I think that's what. Maybe we could do a guys' night and go beer tasting.
I'm down.
Here in LA and find some great Belgium ales.
The only beer that for me that was amazing. I hate beer, but I was in Lake Tahoe and I was at this German pub and they had They had a peach flavored beer. That I was like, this thing is amazing, and it was peach flavored beer with a bratwurst burger. It was amazing. What?
I mean, no disrespect to peaches, but it's a little sissy. Which I'm glad I want to say that word because we're talking about what it means to be a man. And
we're talking about what it means to be a man, and the beautiful thing about this is that we have different backgrounds, we come from different places, and obviously we're men, but it really is something that happened to me that we were talking about off camera. So me and Ange we have this video that was, I guess it was a newlywed game. If you go on YouTube, you can see it. It's a video where we just answer a bunch of questions. And I don't know why one day I decided to go look at the comment section because I was like, oh, people love our videos. And in the comment section, there was an overwhelming amount of people that were calling me gay on this one. They just kept... They're like, this dude's gay. She's going to wake up one day and find out that he's gay. He's gay. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what did I do in this video that made people think I was gay? And I was like analyzing my thing. And I literally was just analyzing and just thinking like, am I not tough enough? Is my voice not low enough? Why am I giving off this persona? And it's not like I was offended in the sense of I don't like gay people, but it was more so like it wasn't who I was. It wasn't who I am. And I love my wife. And you're telling me that one day she's going to wake up and I'm not going to be with her no more. So I was more offended at the fact that you're like coming out of a relationship. But it started making me think, oh, what about me identifies me as a man? And Willie Matt, you said something earlier that you're like, Manny, you're kind of you have a lot of feminine qualities, right?
You do. You're very in touch with your feminine side, and I'm going to use another word that I didn't use earlier. You're a bit manicured, and there's some, like, men generally aren't manicured, right? Like, men are gruff. Men don't really like fully wash their faces. You know, like, men don't like, you know. Some men make, you know, maybe they trim a beard, they have an aesthetic, you know, but like they don't manscape, or they don't go get mani-pedis, or they don't, you know, have like whatever. So I think probably a lot of people interpreted your love for being, to some level, manicured, your fashion sense, like as like a type of feminine quality that speaks to perhaps your sexual orientation.
So do you consider any of those things feminine?
I think they are generally things women tend more to care about. I don't know if they're innately feminine. I mean, that's really a deeper question, though. What is masculine and what is feminine?
Okay, well then there you go. Start it off. What's your definition?
I don't know.
You don't have
like.
Do you? I mean, almost like a personal definition of what at this point in your life you have amassed this amount of knowledge, and you're like, you know what? This is what I feel is. If someone were to ask me what is masculine, this is what I would say.
Well, okay, so I think that there are scripts that we tell ourselves about ourselves. I think masculinity is a script. I think femininity can be a script. I think anything is a script, meaning there is this underlying subtext of reality of what does it mean, like how I should behave, how I should act, how I should be, how I should not be. Based on some definition or box or identity, which I'm of the persuasion, I actually don't think identity boxes are bad personally. Like, I'm not, people hate identity politics or say they hate identity politics. I'm like, everything is identity politics. You do politics from your identity. So that just will be that. I think identity or boxes we place are just starting places. I think they become problematic when they become something you have to fit inside always and tote some line of what is acceptable, what's unacceptable. So to answer your question, I think there is a script that men tend to operate in of what does it mean to be a man? How do I engage the world? How do I present myself? What is acceptable for a man? You know, what is unacceptable?
Well, I guess then in your life, what was the beginning line of what you were taught was masculine?
Well, okay, so I think if we're talking about male formation, I think about my grandfather, I think about my father, and what they taught me, what it means to be a man. And one of the things they taught me of what manhood is men are people of their word.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big one in the masculine script that we tell ourselves, is like men need to show up and be people of their word. I think the next thing we think of is men as providers. Men are the ones, I mean, traditionally in our family structures, it's, you know, America is such a patriarchal society generally, meaning men have often been the breadwinners, so to speak, bringing in the money, go work, and then, you know, women raise the children, and we have these nuclear families, and that's kind of how we've ordered society. Now, obviously, a lot of that has changed in how we perceive that. But yeah, I think men typically have this sense of, I need to go out and provide. I need to go not just work for a sense of personal fulfillment, but work because if I don't, then I'm not going to be a good man, and I'm not going to provide for my family, or I'm not going to be respected. I feel like we connect as men respect to our work and what we are able to produce. And to be honest, if I were to really sit and think about that and judge that, I would actually say I don't think that's a healthy way of viewing our identity. But those are things that were passed down to me of like, a man does this, a man does this. You know, men typically do yard work, right? Yeah. I mean, like as a kid, cutting grass, you know, picking weeds, or like we tend the ground, right? And truthfully, like that wasn't something because maybe it was so physical, right? That's not something that was given to my sisters to learn. My sisters weren't given the lawnmower and told, now you need to cut the lawn. That wasn't my experience. I'm sure there are women out there that did that, but that's generally not a script that happens, right? Women are, you know, learn socially how to take care of other children, how to cook, clean, and then men are called to do, you know, other things. And
a lot of it is innate. So they do say that psychologically women do tend to be more of the caregivers. Like they have that in them. So it's like more natural as opposed to.
You think so?
But
you think men aren't caregivers?
But part of
naturally?
that also has to do with the first toys like they're given. You know, it's like, here's a baby doll. Here, take care of this doll. Change this diaper. You know, like from early on in cartoons, in songs, like all this stuff. That's the role that they're fed. Now, again, I'm sure that there is the capacity. Like, again, I don't know the numbers or whatever, the science behind that. But at the same time, too, that's the role they're given early on. So then by the point that you're of your formative years, you're thinking, oh, this feels natural.
Well, I mean more like biologically. So because women are able to produce children, there's a natural way for them to be caregivers because it's in their biology.
Perhaps
you know what I'm saying?
I don't know the science around this, and it'd be fun to actually look that up. But so I would imagine, perhaps for someone, a woman that has carried a child herself to feel a natural caregiving thing. But I do think there is an element of socialization here, or it's the nature nurture thing, right? Where I think men are caregivers too. I think we generally view it through the lens of protectionism, right? I've got to protect. Yeah. I've got to guard. I've got to whatever. But I do think men are naturally nurturers.
Well, I agree because there was this I wish I would have went back and I was watching a documentary a while back ago on National Geographic and about this tribe in Africa where the men are the one that stay home and the women go out and hunt and do all the things. And I was like, oh snap! And that's their natural way of order. Like, so it's not weird that the dude's home taking care of the crib, you know what I'm saying? And she's out hunting and she's out doing, but I think that's also how it is in lions. Lions
are like that too. I only know this from The Lion King, but you know, I didn't go to college for this. But
what about you, B? What was your growing up?
I would say kind of hitting on a little bit of what Will said. I'll just mention it. It's just like, being an integrous man. It's like, hey, you were true to your word. Your yes means yes. Your no means no, you know? I think the other thing that I was fed is like men are strong, you know?
That's a good one.
And, you know, it's interesting because that's been a whole journey in itself. You know, when you think of a young kid, you're thinking of strong guys. It's like the tough guy. Nothing affects them. Yeah. You know, they hold it together. Men don't cry. You know, only boys do. You know, you ain't a man, you know? And then too, I think it's also that tough guy, macho, and, you know, and more Latino culture, like machismo, you know? But you think of even in hip hop music or, you know, you see these artists and these artists are like hard.
Hip hop is hyper masculine.
Oh, it's hyper crazy. And so I remember listening to like just these different albums as a kid and all these messages of what they're saying about their life is I'm associating it with, oh yeah, like that's ultra man, you know? But then at the same time too, I've always been kind of a sensitive guy. Yeah. So I've always been in touch with my feelings and stuff. And so there was a lot of times in my life where I felt like I'm weak, you know, because I cry a lot. Yeah. I cry at movies, you know, and I'm in touch with my feelings. Like things actually hurt me and affect me. Like, man, I'm not a strong dude. You know, I'm not living up to what it means to be like a real man.
But okay, so this is interesting. At what age was it that you realized that you were not what you have learned, the typical man, like the idea of what a man is? Because that happened to me when I decided to be a thug. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I decided to be a little
baby thug,
thuggaroony because we had no money. Yeah. So it was like, all right, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make some money, and it was crime. So that's when I decided it. But the day I remember where I realized that I am not this tough dude who like whatever was when I was hanging around this dude Ronald, and Ronald was a vice lord. He was from this gang in Chicago, and this dude walked around our school flashing his set like, and there was like Crips, there was Bloods, there was Nietas, there was all these different kind of gangs in our school, and he was the only vice lord, the only one from Chicago. And this fool would be walking around just flashing his like set, just being all like hard, like what you're saying. And then one day, this dude saw this little kid, and he wanted his chain, and he just knocked him out and took his chain.
Isn't there a J. Cole song about that?
And kept going. And I was like,
Nice
oh
watch.
my God. Yeah, this guy just took his chain and just kept going. And I felt bad. Like I looked back, my heart started like to cry a little bit. And I came home and
Sissy.
and I had this conversation with my brother. My brother brought something up about money. I get in a fight with my brother because I'm so upset. And I'm punching my brother, right? I'm just beating him up. And I start crying in the middle of beating him up. And I'm like, why'd you make me do this? Why'd you make me do this? And it was that time that I realized I am not what these dudes would call like a man's man.
Yeah.
And I quickly was like, I got to get out. I got to get out. I can't do this thug thing. Because at some point, somebody's going to realize that I'm just a lover, not a fighter. I love way more than I want to be aggressive. And I'm definitely more, I'm a rom-com guy. More than I'm an action guy. You know what I'm saying? So yes, I do understand certain things. I do lean towards why those people were calling me.
Yeah, for me, I remember realizing that in middle school where I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm strong, but I'm not that strong. Like I must have a different kind of strong because my feelings get hurt. I'm very in touch. I remember my heart got broke because my little crush was like, yeah, we're just going to be friends. And I'm thinking, man, like all these dudes that I'm watching these videos, like, man, they got all these hoes. Like, and I'm over here torn up over one girl, like I'm not that. And so that's why I realized I was like, yeah, I think I'm a lot different. And I'm super thankful because my mom and I have always had a special connection. And I remember early on during those years, I would sit on her bed and we would just talk about what was going on in my life. And she was that person that I'd process things with. And I remember one time, she just like really encouraged me. It was like kind of multiple conversations, but it kind of became our thing. Like I would just go sit on her bed. I'd cry if I needed to, let some stuff out. And my mom, she'd always just say how proud she was of how strong I was inside. So I'm super thankful that my mom during that time she saw the strength in me, even though it wasn't the strength that I had known what a strong man could be. Yeah. And so that was like a huge, huge thing for me.
Here's a good question. In y'all's houses, were you allowed to cry? Was it seen as weakness?
I think it was mixed. Probably like a lot of us, it was a mixed bag, like yes and no. Like, I also think it depends on the age. At some age, it's like, it's appropriate. It feels like, yeah, he's just crying. Like, let him cry. Right. And then at some point it's like, no, you need to toughen up, and I think that's how people, they want to help you face life and reality because life is hard. Life is tough. People out there don't care about you. They're not going to be sympathetic toward you. So oftentimes I feel like our nuclear families, and I'm going to take it a step deeper. We're all like men of color at the table. I think there's even an extra burden in our communities where people feel like they need to toughen us up because the world, and when I say world, I mean white supremacy, is so tough on us and isn't going to be kind to us and isn't going to see us as full human beings, that I think oftentimes our parental figures and parents they represent that adversarial role in our lives sometimes, like to try to like, let me be tough on you so that way when you get out there, you at least have a context for what is really going on. And
your parents, you feel like your parents
I feel
did
like
that?
to some level, yeah. Believe it or not, I would actually say in my family, my dad was a bit more of the tender one and my mom was way more tough. My mom was like, the world ain't gonna care about you. They ain't gonna care what you look like. They don't care about your heart. They're just gonna see you as that, So actually, I need to be tough on you. I need to like hold this line here and basically to help make you a man because the world is not going to see your humanity. So for me, you talk about your mom being kind of like that safe nurturing spot. I actually feel like my mom was a little bit more of the direct opposite. Not any less loving, but loving in the sense of I love you so much. I've got to prepare you for what's coming because I don't think you're ready and you're too sensitive.
Wow. I don't remember any of that with my parents.
Yeah, for me, my mom was the nurturing one, which, again, my dad, obviously, I knew my dad loved me. Obviously, that was not a question at any point. But for him, I think he felt like, hey, I got to toughen you up. And I think part of that is just being a person of color for him, growing up where he grew up.
Yep.
And he didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
So it's like in the absence of that, he's like, yo, I got to prepare my son for the rest of the world. And so he'd always tell me, he's like, hey, man, keep your tender heart, but you got to have tough skin.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to paint caricatures. My dad was, I say tended to be, that my mom tended to be. Didn't mean my mom wasn't nurturing at times.
Right.
My dad wasn't tough on me. I remember you brought up the whole bullying thing, which I feel like, again, that's another. So there's these bubbles of like you experience resistance within family structures as a man, as a human being, right? Like sometimes it's siblings. Your siblings are like adversaries to you, you know? So you experience that type of resistance. Then you get out into maybe your school environment, and school becomes like a kind of a broader circle, right? And you experience resistance there and people that are pushing back on who you are, your identity, or how you present to the world as men. So I used to get bullied at the school bus stop. And I remember going to my dad and being like, Dad, these kids are mean to me. At this time, I'm in Detroit, taking the bus from the west side to the east side, which is, I mean, this is like probably with the whole bus ride, like hour and a half type bus rides. We're waking up super early, trudging through snow, you know, or my dad would drive me to the school bus. And then, and so at some point he was like, fight him back.
Yeah.
There wasn't, hey, go tell the principal, or like, you know what I'm saying? It was like, you got to toughen, like you have to push back. You need to like show them you're not one to be messed with. And I feel like we almost as men sometimes do this hazing initiation thing to each other, especially as children, where we try to prove who's stronger and who's like better, and you're weak, you're strong, you're sort of strong, you know, like, and we've somehow like become okay with that type of hazing thing. Today it's a bit more, I've noticed people push back on bullying. There's a whole
for sure
campaign.
Yeah.
But like when we were growing up, like bullying was a normal part of life.
It really was.
That was male initiation.
Yeah.
And we didn't complain. I didn't complain. If I got bullied, like when I did get bullied, I remember I got jumped once in 8th grade for making us lose. We had these like field games that we would have as a class, and I made us lose the field games, and I got jumped, and I told my parents, and they were like, did you get any shots in? Like, did you hit anybody? And I was like, yeah, I got some shots in. They were like, good. That's what life is about. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't remember ever having these conversations. What I learned, and that's really because my parents weren't conversational at all. Like we didn't talk about anything. You know, the money talk was, my dad was save more than you spend. The sex talk was don't get no girl pregnant. That's it. These are just one sentence talks, right? So as far as being bullied or what it means to be a man, I think what I learned, it was just watching my dad. Like I just watched him, and I saw him work hella hard. Mm-hmm. He showed up to all my games. So hard worker shows up.
Yep.
Right? And then my dad didn't take no shit from nobody. It doesn't matter who he was. I remember we were at a baseball game once, and there was this situation where one of these guys, there was this tall black dude. Like he was like 2 something, like you don't mess. He didn't look like somebody. And my dad's like 5'9", like 160 pound, like Puerto Rican dude. And this guy says something to me like in a harsh tone. And my dad walks up to him and literally has to stare at him like this, neck cranked back. And he's like, what the did you say to my son? You ever talk to my son again, I'll knock you out. Like with so much veracity that the dude was just like, even though he probably could have just walked my dad, he just stood there almost like, this dude must know something that I don't, because he's talking to me like he could really whip my ass.
But that to me is part of the caregiver like protection thing, like
sure.
Because women are like that too. Like women, if you like threaten their children, women get aggressive, right? Like there's that thing too. So I think to the flip side, the nurturing like is the protection thing of like, you mess with my child, I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's super strong purely in women. I think men have that too. Like
for sure.
I think
we have it more so because there's an expectation of us to be that.
Yeah.
In every movie, if there's a sound in the house and y'all are in the bed, who's going to go check? The dude is going to go check. In every situation where it's a scary movie and it's like, yo, there's something outside. Stay right here. I'm going to go. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not doing that, you ain't no man. You're a punk.
Okay, so then what does it mean? Yeah, well, let's talk about all those. Like, because I've said it twice, just throwing it out there. Like, I said the word sissy.
Yeah.
Punk. Weak. So I think that there is a real problem in the way that boys are socialized.
Well, let's also throw in gay.
I'm going to get there.
In the rap way.
Yeah.
in the rap way, where how rappers back in the day it was okay to that was the term. That was the you don't really hear it too much now, but back in the day, that was like the worst thing. You can be like, yo, you gay, yo, you this,
gay
like what I was called.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
Or that you're more woman than you are man.
Yeah, or even if you weren't hooking up with girls. Like I remember in high school, I wasn't like, obviously, if you've listened to this podcast, I was a virgin till Maddie and I got together. So people just assumed like, oh, Brandon Smith's gay. Just because he's not sleeping around.
When
I
got saved,
with girls,
they told me that I was gay.
And they're like, "Oh, he's gay, man. When are you gonna come out the closet?" Just because I wasn't hooking up with girls, because that was one of the things that they associate. Like, hey, if you're a dude, oh, you're gonna get with women.
Yeah,
you know, like being heterosexual was part of that. Like that's what it means to be a man.
When I found Jesus and I stopped having sex, I told my boys that's the first thing they said. They're like, "You're gay," and they would leave like nudie pics of girls in my locker, in my notebook, in my whatever, as if somehow to say, I don't really know what they were trying to say. I don't.
And this is I've never in my life wanted to defend people like this. I kind of just wonder though, if it's such to become saved, I guess, which then means I'm going to be sexually abstinent.
Sure.
Feels like a condescending thing, right? Like it feels like, oh, I'm better than you. Like I'm giving my life to Jesus, and therefore I don't do these things because I'm saved now. Which I think even that connotation of I'm saved is a type of superiority thing, of like, rather than just like a personal conviction, right? Especially the way when you become saved initially, you oftentimes tell people about it, and then you're like, I'm living my life different. I'm not doing this.
What's the same thing you feel?
Drinking, I'm not.
It's the same thing you feel when somebody's on a new diet.
Yeah.
If they're virgin and not virgin, vegan, and they make you, if you eat meat, it's
you're
like
wait, I'm bad for eating meat? They were like, oh, we bad for fucking bitches, and you are like better than us? Like it's that thing. But going back to my original point about how boys are socialized. So yeah, punk, sissy, gay, weak, all these words are used to almost kind of crab in a barrel thing of like, to keep us in a certain script, right? To say men behave like this, men do this, this is appropriate. But that view of masculinity is so one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's so limited. It's so constricted to, like you said, provider, maybe if you come from a good household, just be a man of integrity, provide, be a man of integrity, get bitches, like stun on these hoes and do your thing. Like that's such a limited worldview. But boys versus girls are socialized so differently. So there's studies that have shown, and I would love to actually give one or two articles in the liner notes of the show, just so people don't think I'm talking out the side of my butt. But there are studies that have shown that girls have a higher language center by, age 6, 7. And girls actually have a type of relational hierarchy and structure. So they did a study and started asking children of all different ages who your best friend is. So they asked girls, they asked guys. It was very clear with girls that if a girl had a best friend, that other person identified as their best friend. Yeah, that's my best friend. Susie's my best friend. Jane's my best friend, right? It's clear. We know what the hierarchy is. Higher language center girls are operating by. They started doing the study with boys. And if a boy had identified someone as his best friend, it was almost always certain that other boy never saw him as his best friend.
Interesting.
Which shows like a real lack of communication,
Sure.
breakdown happening, right, with boys and their social structure and how they relate to each other, how they talk to each other. And so when you translate that to the older you get, one of the things the study found was that fear of being gay actually kept boys from developing intimate relationships with other boys.
Wow.
I believe that.
I totally believe that as well.
That's something that, because it's, and it's funny when I say this sometimes, and people like when I say it, they initially get real like weird about it. But when I say the reason you're friends with your certain friends is because you're attracted to them.
Yeah.
But the second they hear attracted to them, is like, whoa, all right, man, I'm not attracted to my homie. Yeah. No, what I mean is you're attracted to everything about them except for the sex side. But literally everything else you can go down. Why are you friends with this dude? He's loyal. You know what I'm saying? When we hang out, I could talk to this dude. He's there when I need him. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can just kick it. We can do anything from whatever. You're literally describing the same thing you would do with your girl, except for at the end of it, you'd be like, and she's good in bed, or and she's, and we can have, what I'm saying?
Can I add one more piece to that? And maybe this will push some boundaries. I do think that there is a type of physical attraction that heterosexual men can have with each other that doesn't lead to sexual encounter, right? So like, I find you aesthetically pleasing, right? Like, which would be a type of physical attraction. Like, I find you physically attractive. And that is maybe one of the reasons why I do enjoy being in your presence or constantly being around you, right? Like, but that's such an unsaid script. That's an unsaid subtext to some of our relationships that, that even saying that, some people or some guys are going to instantly be like, no, what you talking about? Like, I don't think of that like that. Like, because again, it's not about what you think about. It's how your brain registers that person. Right. So your brain does find that person and their presence, whether physically or not, or a mix of both, finds them agreeable to you. You feel like their energy, their presence, their look, their aesthetic, their vibe matches with you somehow, or agrees with you, or you find yourself attracted to that. That doesn't mean you want to have sex with that person. Right. That just simply means I find that person. And I think we're so afraid to be vulnerable in what our biases are, or and we don't often explore it too. Like, we don't even think about, what does my brain think about that person? Like, it's so like, our bodies are a computer, right? And so we're not always aware of the processes that are happening on behalf of us to help us show up in the world and benefit who we are, or help us navigate relationships in the world. But yeah, so going back to the study, boys are often afraid of being gay, which forces them to have very limited, if not non-existent, intimate, vulnerable relationships with other men. The problem is that carries on into the later parts of their life. So for instance, heterosexual men, let's just start there. They will typically start dating, maybe get married. If they get married, the woman becomes the central relational figure in their relationship. The woman becomes almost the mediator between her husband and the rest of the world. Because women are more relational. They're more social. They understand hierarchy. They understand social relationships and dynamics. They perceive, they're intuitive, they're empathic. So they become that. So the man just checks out, right? Because he doesn't have the emotional skill set most often to develop his own intimate, vulnerable friendships. So the woman becomes the mediator. Guess what happens later on in life when 50%, 60% of marriages end in divorce?
Does the man go experiment or something? Or
no, probably the man has nothing.
The man has nothing.
Because there's been no relationships that have been built. And that's so interesting you say that, because my dad and I were having, back during around Christmas time, we're having an honest conversation about this, about friendships. And he says, you know what, son, that's something I really admire about you, of like how intentional you are in friendships and relationships around you. And he goes, that's something that is new. I feel like your generation, you guys are so relational. And again, I think I think we're all meant for relationships. I just think maybe this generation has been given some better tools. We're having different conversations.
That's true.
And so he's talking about his generation, and he's just saying, a lot of us, man, we weren't given those tools. Yeah. Like, we don't really have a lot of these friendships. We're so focused on whether it was like their job or their work, responsibilities and all these, that we completely overlooked this, which is so interesting because
that's boomers. Boomer generation did that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think too, I'm like, man, like this was one of those conversations for me that kind of actually took my career path down a different way. Like, I'm playing in China. I'm thinking, man, I'm so lonely. I'm so cut off from all relationships. I'm making good money. And I'm thinking, I'd rather have relationships than live out this dream, because my dream is actually like family. And I think previous generations, it'd be like, oh, money over relationship.
Yeah. Here's a question. Did you guys so I had a group of friends that we got really tight. I would say towards the end of high school, more coming into college. And it was like a group of that I feel like, to this day we still talk. So it was kind of lifers. You could tell, like, after all the BS of high school, you have settled into this group of friends that is like, we're doing college together, and then we're heading into life. And so for me, it was this group of 5, you know what I'm saying? The other 4, hyper masculine, And I noticed within the group where you were talking about hierarchy, you know, you have the super jock. And this one, everybody thought they were a super jock. I was a jock, but I was very much okay being the non-jockey jock. But I just so happened to fall as I became the punchline to a lot of the jokes because of, I guess, my feminine, you know, tactics. Instead of action, I was watching rom-coms, you know, like I'm a Hallmark guy. I'm all about fashion, you know, I'm all about a lot of the things that that one would say in this world, oh, this is way more feminine than anything else. Did you guys in your circle, like what were you? Like which guy with you? Which archetype were you?
Well, I mean, you guys did more athletics than I did. The most athletic thing I ever did was Pee-wee baseball.
And it stopped there.
Yeah. And then later on in life, I did marching band, which was very athletic, but it just was, you know, nerdy athletic.
It's not seen in any way towards like your traditional big three sports, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, but marching band was very physical. But yeah, I did marching band. So I was, you know, I think that's probably why we all relate as friends, because none of us were the alpha male type guy. Like we were all sensitive. I was very sensitive, poetic. Wanted to like write and come up with fantasies in my head versus like actually, you know, putting my hands to the ground to something, like coming up with, I was always in idea fantasy land. So yeah, I was that kid.
Well, cause I think that's why the reason I brung it up, because I was literally, as we're having this conversation right here, us three, I'm looking at more so the current daily group that is my guy group, which is you guys. And is there anybody else?
There's probably a few others.
A few others that are not here. There hasn't been, or at least I feel like there hasn't been a need to identify which archetype each person is. There's at least, and I don't know if that's just because of maturity, we're way past that. Or it's just the fact that we understand whoever it is that we are, there's such an acceptance of it that and a lack of need to put each other in a category. Whereas before, and I don't know if that's a dude thing, but there was like a necessity to figure out who's the jock, who's the smart guy, who's the whatever. And the reason we could look back at our movies. Think about all of our movies. There was always these archetypes, and it was necessary to define them. It was necessary to find out who was the smart guy, who was the slut, who was the religious person, who was this in our hierarchy, so that we can, I guess, know how to treat them or know what to expect from them.
I think that's key what you just said, because as palatable as what you just said was in terms of relatability of how do we function in these systems, I need to know where everyone's at, their social locations. What's underlying all of that is a deep violence to it all. Because the notion of hierarchy, in my opinion, is violent. It assumes some people are better than other people. It's superiority, inferiority. I need to know if I'm the jock, I'm higher up on the food chain than the band geek, than the smart guy. You know, maybe the smart guy might win out later in life because he becomes rich because he did some tech stuff. But
basically,
like,
well, in our culture, the jock guy is the top.
Yeah, but
go to China and you ain't it.
Yeah, but like, with the sense of like, we do that with able bodies, better looking, pretty people, as I call them. Especially, we live in Hollywood, right? It's a city filled with gorgeous looking people. There's even a hierarchy to beauty.
Yeah.
Also, like physicality and in your build and how that works for you. Skin color, like all these things are matrices of oppressions and dominations that actually a lot of people have a hard time, seeing. They say they have a hard time seeing oppression everywhere. And I'm like, no, it's there. It's our gravity. It's so our gravity that we've normalized it and made it cute and put it on romantic comedy movies or movies in general. And we talk about these archetypes, but we never talk about how these archetypes are violent to each other and how they oppress each other, how they diminish each other, how they dehumanize each other. Because truthfully, as human beings, and this goes into the masculinity script, without these scripts, without hierarchies and oppressions and dominations and, these archetypes, we don't know who we are. As human, we don't know what we are.
Well, that, and we don't know. I feel like this is the same with religion. We need to have a clear box so that we can put it or you into it.
Yeah.
It is necessary for me to put you into a box because I'm not comfortable with the fluidity.
Saint.
Us, them.
Yeah. Us, them. Believer, unbeliever. Faithful, wayward.
Correct.
Right? Like we create these distinctions. Church, the world.
Right.
Secular, sacred.
Yeah.
We create these dualities of existence and these either or realities that are always going to be antagonistic towards each other. Mm-hmm. Duality as a construct, good, bad, evil,
hero, villain,
good, hero,
antagonist,
villain,
protagonist.
Yes. There's something in the antagonism of that is our life, right? That and I think that's where a lot of our anxiety comes from. Our subtle, like as a society, because we've so given ourselves over to these matrices of domination and ideas of superiority, inferiority within ourselves and within other people, that we don't know how to love other people. So as men, right, being masculine, like how do I love another man in a way that is full, that is rich, that is holy? Because I think the word holy, right, the way we think of it, we think of the word holy as like, theologically speaking, as God is holy, meaning he's separate, he's better than, we think of it
without
that way,
fault. Yeah,
without fault. But actually, I think the word holy really, and holiness is, I've learned to translate in my life as the word wholeness. And wholeness actually incorporates everything, the good and the bad, and transcends it all in my spirituality. And so I think of, what does it mean to be whole? What does it mean to be holy? How do we love other people that are different from us, or as men, for instance, there's this crazy divide, I think, in our world that I don't think very few people have been able to name correctly. So I'm going to name it right here. Heterosexual men and homosexual men do not know how to love each other, generally.
Yeah.
They tend not to know how to be in relationship to each other. So they become two separate worlds. This hyper masculine world that is heterosexual, that's about getting money and women and having those things, whatever. And then there's gay culture, and gay culture is doing its own thing, right? And very few do they mix together. Because there are two different scripts going on here of what does it mean to be a man and how do men relate to other men. And I think one of the first steps we need to start asking is, how do men across any type of racial line, across any body type line, able-bodied, disabled bodies, LGBT folks, men that do identify as men need to figure out how to relate to each other and how to love each other and how to be whole.
Yeah.
Because I am better with you and you're better with me. And that goes across any identity, social location, right? Is that type of radical love of how do heterosexual men love their homosexual brothers.
Well, I think the hard part about that is that one would say, I guess, to a heterosexual man, I guess by default, the expectation, or at least and this is something I've never even thought about.
We don't think
do you subconsciously even see the other side as a man?
Yeah. Which a lot of heterosexual men don't. Because
I don't even know if it's on purpose. I think it's literally you just assume that the homosexual man is choosing to be separate or feminine or a girl, basically, is what you think.
I think that the matrix of domination, which I believe is in our social hierarchies. I mean, the Apostle Paul to me calls it the powers and principalities. When I think of powers and principalities, I actually think of our social matrices of how we, these interlocking systems of domination work. Systems of domination and social hierarchies work to render some people hyper visible and other people hyper invisible. So some people you're not even, the reason why you didn't think about that is because everything in the social matrix teaches you to ignore those people, to not see those people, to not acknowledge their humanity. They're there, but you don't tend to think about the fullness of their humanity and how their humanity should interact with your humanity. Why? Because of the social hierarchies of superiority, inferiority. Yeah. So it renders LGBT people more invisible. Now we're living in a time where LGBT people are starting to have more power, access, and money to be able to make themselves visible. Yeah. And then what does it get called? Oh, that's just a gay agenda.
Yeah.
That's what it gets called, right? And that becomes a way to say, oh, you're just trying to make me, why? Because for so long, I've rendered you invisible. I've refused to see you. Now you have money and access and are able to make yourself visible. And I don't know what to do with that because in my mind, this is all subconscious, right?
Yeah.
Unconscious. I'm better than you.
Yeah. And if you're not seeing someone as an equal and someone who has been out of sight for you, there's no way that you're going to treat them with the same love and respect as to someone that you see eye to eye with.
No, not at all.
And it's going to be a completely, hey, I am above you. I am better than you. And there's nothing you could really do about it.
That translates over to women and race.
It does. It translates because social locations make you, again, hyper visible. Certain people, because if they're hyper feminine or hyper masculine, they get more visibility because, again, it's propping up the constructs of what we think. The idealized self of what it means to be a woman, what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be whatever, right? Those tend to rise more in our culture, American culture, to the forefront and then we worship and kind of praise them, and there are celebrities, right? And there are the people we cheer on. And so it makes some people hyper visible, and then it makes other people hyper invisible, utterly invisible. We don't look at the fact that some of the most vulnerable people in our society are Black trans women. Don't let a white girl get missing. We are on it. We got the Amber Alerts ready. We are like sharing the photos. Don't let, a white child experience suffering or die. And then we're like, we got to pray and we got to rally and we got to, how dare this happen? If a Black trans person dies, we don't care. If a brown Muslim person in our primarily Christian society is scapegoated, demonized, we're like, oh, I mean, if we even acknowledge it at all. And those, I think, are the things that we have to start really reconciling and coming together. Even within ourselves, the script of masculinity says that I am only this, right? But I think ultimately to be whole, I have to realize, though I am only this, I am in connection to you and to you and to you and those that are different from me. I'm not trans, but I need my trans brothers and sisters to make me whole. And I think until we start reframing it in that way, like whoever is the least among you, this is why the gospel is important, because the gospel is centering everyone on the margins of society, the people that are hyper invisible. The gospel says you actually belong in the very center, and God sees you and knows you, and that's why you're loved. That's why he hung out with prostitutes. Yeah. That's why he hung out with, people of disreputable, identities, because he was like, and women, he did that to women. Jesus highlighted the power, the beauty, the intrinsic humanity of women in a society that was so patriarchal and dominated them. Yeah. Women were the first people to, show up at the tomb and testify to the resurrection. Women were the people that he gathered together, and Mary sat at his feet. Another woman washed his feet with her hair. She wept and she violently cried over him because she knew what happens when a man shows up to disrupt the system. He gets murdered. Mm-hmm. So, Mary of Bethany shows up and weeps and cries and, washes his feet with her hair, not as some just act of random worship because he's God, but simply because she knows this man's about to be murdered.
Man, I think really with maybe one of our biggest downfall as men is the fear of opening up those parts of us that have been for so long previously identified or the walls were drawn in this area. The walls have been made in this part of our house, and you feel safe in it because mostly everybody thinks the same way. Yeah. So it feels very right.
And the system endorses it. The system endorses yes, it. The government endorses it. The government says you can get married, those people can't. So yeah, you feel like you're on top of the world.
And you know what, to be honest, before I got married, a lot of these situations and these subjects were aloof to me. I didn't even know to ask the question, because before I got married, I've never had a conversation with a gay person. I have still yet to have a conversation with a trans. I have not. I wouldn't say there's a lot of racists that I didn't really come in contact with. but since I traveled a lot, I did have the ability. But racism is not something that I've dealt with a lot. And you know,
I think you have, but I also think you get taught how not to view it, or to basically say, well, that person's just being whatever. But I
kind of feel like the reason I haven't really dealt with, and I don't want to say I haven't, because I have, but not enough for it to feel like something that really affected my life, is because I typically got a pass based on two things: the popularity and the way that I looked. It was really hard for people to be racist to me when they either wanted to get with me, be with me, or they liked, I was the pretty version of maybe something that they hate. And it was really hard to hate the pretty version of anything. And I'm not trying to say that on me. I'm just saying, like, from what other people have told me, because I've had these conversations with people of the other race. And like, I was a good 10 years where I was dating white chicks. So I had to meet a lot of white parents. I had to meet a lot of white friends. And I was just always looked at as the exotic dude. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have to deal with that stuff.
Well, but here's the thing though. Racism, and not to stray too off course, but like racism is either the utter dehumanization or the utter fetishization of black and brown bodies. So for you, it felt like an honor because people were like, oh, he's good looking. We celebrate him, but it wasn't a real celebration of the fullness of your humanity. It was a hyper fetishization, which is a type of like racism. And there's studies, PPRI has done studies on like the relationship between white men and black men. And for instance, they typically find that white men view black men through the lens of pet or threat. So often like in the white Christian music world, which you were in, as a man of color, as Puerto Rican, you are viewed either through the lens of like fetishization. You're my pet. Oh man, he's great. We love him.
Oh my God, I literally got petted.
Yeah.
White girls would literally ask to pet my hair.
Yeah.
Still, I've been with you several times where that happens. Like, oh my God, your hair, it's amazing.
Can I touch it?
Can I touch it?
Yeah, can I touch it?
Yeah, I mean, Solange wrote a whole song called "Don't Touch My Hair," right? Because that happens for black women, and it's not cute, right? It's like. Yeah. Wait, hold on, and so people feel a sense of entitlement, right? So it's the pet thing. It's like, I'm gonna fetishize you. You're exotic. You're different. You know, you seem cool. You're articulate. So you know, you're like one of the good ones. You're like us.
Yes, you're articulate, which I would get a ton. You know, and it's funny, especially like when I was doing interviews and stuff in college. I mean, I'd have white teammates who would say literally the same exact things, but when those interviews were done, they'd come up to me, reporters, interviewers would say, "Hey, man, it was so great to talk to you. You are so articulate." And I used to get so offended because I knew what they were really saying. What they were saying was people of your color usually aren't good with words. Right. And they're not able to speak as clearly and as effectively as you are. So you're articulate. You're one of the good ones.
That's how Barack Obama got elected. He was so articulate, and everyone was like, "Oh, even Joe Biden before he became the VP nom." There's like audio of him. I've listened to it where Joe Biden was like, "You know, what's great about this guy that's coming up is, you know, he's so articulate. You know, like he's so clean with it, right? Because ultimately, so that's why I kind of nodded like, he experienced racism because." Here's the thing, it came across as a celebration, but underneath that was we have such a low expectation of people from you and where you come from that when you even remotely sort of seem to rise above that, we're just so impressed and we're so happy with you. And that could very well be it, because you know I brought that up because when you were talking about and Puerto Ricans are black, by the way, too.
100%. Which is interesting. I hope the girl's watching it. There's a girl that hit me up, which I want to do a podcast about language because she hit me up about using the N word, and she was like, "You're not even black," and I'm like, "Chick, I'm freaking." I told her, I was like, what do you think I look like? Why do you think I look the way I have black in me like you have black in you? And I promise you're not 100% black. We're all this mix of things. And I'm a beautiful mix of Spaniard, Indian, and black. And she wanted to, which I appreciated her because she was coming from it. She wasn't trying to be like disrespectful. I was like, look, this is a great conversation. Thank you so much. But beyond that, me learning as a man, what you were talking about, to a way for we to open ourselves to other men and to learn how to love deeper. I was watching this documentary with The Rock, and it was about this. He went through this Miami-Dade boot camp, and it was prisoners. And prisoners is obviously a part of society that we can really give two shits about. And I don't know how this happened, but I'm watching this documentary because I'm on this thing of I'm so afraid of going to prison. And I just started bawling. It was like 6 a.m. I was up and I was watching this documentary. And I don't know these kids at all. There was like some white guys in there, some Spanish dudes, some black dudes. And I was bawling because for 1 second, I opened myself up like as a man to feel another man's plight who was completely different from me. And I was feeling them like I was literally saying in my bed, nobody cares for them. Nobody believes that they can be more. And I hear themselves telling themselves, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I just started like weeping because I'm like, this is probably the first time they've ever uttered these words to themselves as a man. As a man. And in this documentary, I was seeing so much like the archetype of a man. One black kid, he was so upset that the guys were talking to him loud. He felt it was so disrespected. Even though what the guy was saying was, do you not want to get out of here? All you have to do is pass this 4-month class and you don't have to face the 30 years in prison. That's all you got to do. Don't you want it? And the dude still felt so disrespected because somehow, some way, as men, we're taught that if another man does anything that even comes close to feeling disrespected, you have to respond. This kid, because of this gravitas of wanting to feel like I'm a man, ain't nobody gonna disrespect me, he decides to go to prison. He gets kicked out of the program. 4 months is all they're asking. 4 months. And you don't have to go to prison for the 30 years. Because he wanted to be a man. He felt, ain't nobody gonna disrespect me, and goes to prison for 30 years. Bruh.
But can we also acknowledge the level to which we have romanticized, men have romanticized gangsterism? Yeah. And that's across spectrum. That's not simply in black and brown cultures.
No, it's, yeah.
We look at, one of the Irishmen that just came out, like The Godfather, all these all these gangsters. We were Bonnie and Clyde. They were so celebrated. In
I was in
culture.
love with mob bosses.
Mob bosses.
Yeah.
America is built on gangsterism, and we have celebrated it. We've romanticized it. So this dude in prison being like, I'm gonna stand my ground, and I don't care. I'll take the punishment. We can't even really fault him for that because guess what? That is our history. That is everything we've done as men in this country. Our fathers' fathers have done. Our fathers did it. The whole Civil War was about men who refused to acknowledge that it was wrong to own other human beings. And they willingly sent themselves and their sons to death for it. Almost over 700,000 people died in the Civil War. 750,000 plus people died to defend a man's right to own another human being. That's our history. That's our culture. Prison culture is a replication of all that. It's the founding of some of our greatest institutions, some of our greatest banks, and some of our greatest industries came from gangsterism. It came from mob bosses.
Yeah.
And so when folks play out that narrative, and men in particular play out that script, we are not doing something that's just us in a moment.
Yeah.
We are connected to a history and a tradition of men that have gone before us, that have paved the way of this is what it means to be a man. You hold your own. You stand your ground, right?
Don't let no one disrespect
Don't let no one disrespect
no one's
you.
gonna cross me.
No one gonna tell me what to do. Even Lil Nas like, can't nobody tell me nothing. Like there's some, and then you have the stadium with like the little kids, like in elementary school, that video that went viral, right? And all these little kids are singing it. And I'm like, that is the most American video I can ever think of. Can't nobody tell me nothing.
Yeah.
That's the whole history of this country. It's genocide, it's theft, it's plunder, it's gangsterism. And we think that's masculinity. We think that's what it means to be a man. And until we begin to unmask that script and really show how violent it is, that's why, LGBT people experience higher rates of suicide and depression, and LGBT youth in particular, like trans youth, over 40% of them have attempted suicide, partly because of this society and the way the pressure this society puts on you to conform. And so we need to start having these honest conversations. We need to start unmasking these scripts. And truth be told, until men decide it's time to rewrite the script, we're going to keep falling into so many of these conundrums that we're in, even our current political moments attached to that, our current race relations moments. This is all attached to
our spiritual as well.
Our spiritual, the church is in crisis because of this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so many people have been given new scripts of how to operate. LGBT people have been given liberation and scripts. Black people have been given a new script, a new liberation. Women, and it started, long ago, women's suffrage, which I found out recently started in the Black church. The women's suffrage movement started with Black women saying we should be able to preach and we're just as equal to you. Wow. This was in like the early 1800s. Just the Black AME church. I just found this out. The women's suffrage movement started by Black women defyingly saying we deserve authority in the pulpit, long before it, right? Women have been given a new script. The women, feminism is a new script for women. Womanism is a new script for women. One of the few people in our society that has not been given a new script are men.
Well, I think mainly because, and look, I hope women are actually listening to this. I really do hope that they're listening and not passing it off to a guy to listen to, because I feel like this is more important for a woman to understand, and not all, but women who choose to be in a relationship with men, because you're dealing with the byproduct of whatever archetype your man was taught to be, and the fear of him thinking outside of that. This conversation is happening only because I feel like us three have no longer bought into the idea of there is a typical man, because I'm learning more and more than ever that there is such a fluidity within masculinity, femininity, men, women,
because you're both
in so many ways. Yeah, like it's a beautiful
masculine and feminine
thing
in you, and that is the whole picture of God and the divine. God is not, we use male terms with God, but God is the representation of masculine, feminine, and beyond, right? Correct. God is non-binary, actually. But God is not just man, but God is woman, and God is non-binary. God is beyond it. So these definitions that we've placed have been very unhelpful, and it's time that we start liberating ourselves. It's time for women, like you said, to understand that the archetype that probably the man in your life or men in your life are dealing with, men are in a tough situation because they're hyper visible. They're the ones propped up the most by society because of the patriarchy, but also they're some of the most malnourished emotionally, spiritually, physically. And that study that I mentioned, the way it roots is like men are dying primarily from loneliness and a broken heart because they get to later parts in their life, especially if they're divorced, and their whole relationships have been mitigated by women, and they get divorced and they lose everybody. And they're dying. People are dying. Men are dying because they're lonely. Male loneliness is an epidemic in this country.
And it's interesting, like there was this class I took in Bible college. It was a New Testament class, and I asked all the men in there, and this, I will never forget this. Out of all Bible college, this is one of the most prolific moments in my time there. I walked into class, and the teacher hadn't gotten there yet, but I stood at the front, and I was like, "Hey guys, I got a quick question. How many of you would be okay if your wife made more money than you?" When I tell you the anger that I was met with, there was this like wannabe righteous anger that came at me. And the amount of times I heard the scripture of the man is the head of the household. The man is the head of the household. The man is the head of the household. And how it translated to them as, no, she can't. She's not allowed to.
As if there
weren't. And this was our future preachers of America. And what made me think of is like, oh my God, the abuse that your wives are gonna.
Oh, poor thing.
Because you may marry like these amazing women that have like greatness, not only greatness, but wealth.
Yeah.
Actual wealth like monetary wealth in them.
and
that you are gonna
and spiritual wealth too.
Exactly, like beyond the what I'm talking about. Like women have this natural wealth, but an actual wealth, because I'm talking about specifically that question was about monetarily. Like, can they make more? You're gonna dwindle and stop the blessing that can make your life completely different. Not only your life, but your kid's life, because of some pseudo like belief that the man is supposed to be the guy that makes the money. And I'm like, what if Joyce Meyer's husband was out like that? What if, let's go down the line, you know?
But yes, Manny. I mean, yes, because the patriarchy is God's design. And that is at the core of it, especially in the Christian world. Yeah. Is that God has ordained men to be dominant and women to be submissive. And that is it's an idolatry. It is an actual subversion of the very nature of God in all of humanity, because women are representative of the nature of God. Women in their femininity and in their culture are representative, same as black people, right? Like Jonathan Metzl wrote a book called Dying of Whiteness. And basically what he, as a medical physician, did was he went to all these conservative states and showed how the white median health rate was declining, meaning white men and white women were dying because of conservative politics. They were dying 5 years younger than previously because of certain gun control policies that were being enacted, because of a lack of rolling out of healthcare and Obamacare. And so he did this study, and he interviews these people in this book called Dying of Whiteness. And what he found was people willingly, knowing that they were losing, were okay to accept this conservative script politically that was given to them that was hurting them, because at least the black people aren't getting it. At least the immigrants and the Latinos aren't getting it. We don't want them to prosper. So I'm willing to take less in order to force my hierarchy on them. And that's the thing in the church. That's the oppression that men have tied into. I'm willing to limit the nature of God and limit the revelation of God in and through women, because it buys into my superiority.
Yeah. And see, that's the funny thing, because in those scriptures, I never saw the man over, like, because when he said, men, love your wife like Christ loves the church, like that solidified it for me. Like, oh shit, like I have to be ready to like, and that's how I've always taken it. Like, I have to be ready to lay it all down. And the only way I can get there is to lift this person up higher than me. And why would I die for something lower than me? It's not worth it. I have to now give this person worth and lift her up over me. So much so that the idea of her dying before me is ludicrous. So I have to put myself in harm's way for her in every way possible, on a daily, in a figurative death, a spiritual death, but also in a physical. Like, this chick is so dope. Like, she's so honorable. I love her so much that I'm willing to go first. I'm willing to let go of all of me. Until you can get there, like, I feel like that's what the real scripture was about. I don't feel like that's how it was used, because obviously, like I just said, in that
never is
in that class, I felt like, I felt scared.
Yeah,
because I was like, all these guys are pastoral majors. I was a comm major. I had to do it to get my Bible degree, but I'm like, you're going to be leading the church, and this is what you're going to teach people.
Yeah, that explains why people are walking away.
And it blew my mind. I couldn't. I like literally just sat down and was like, Jesus, these are your leaders. Like, and I'm not trying to like. They're good people. I'm not trying to say that they're bad people, but I just felt like in this one area,
this is very scary.
It was scary for me.
Where are you leading? And then too, I think about there's probably some men who have had the thought of like, I obviously don't fit in the script. I'm going to play the role. But if I don't have this script, who am I? And what do I have? Because I don't have anything outside of this, because I've so been used to this. This is what's celebrated. This is what's championed. This is what's empowered. These are the people who get all the resources.
Yes.
So if I decide to divert from this path and this script, I'm going to end up as the people that I don't see as equal to me. And now I'm on the bottom. Now I'm on the outside.
Somehow, some way, yeah. I think about people like my business manager, Lou. Shout out to Lou, TriStar Management. She is a boss. Like she reps J-Lo, Gwen Stefani, like Britney Spears, like she's rolling. And if you walk to her office, isn't like it is a guy's dream. Pretty, nothing but pretty successful women. That's all she hires. Just now she has some dudes, she has some accountants, some lawyers that are dudes, but they are definitely the minority. All right. So my band loved depositing checks. They loved going to the office and depositing checks. But her husband is just a pastor. Like I wonder if he's still pastoring, but he was a pastor at a church, not even close to what she does. Mm-hmm. She is by far the giant in the relationship. But their relationship is so dope together. Like when I see him, it fills me with joy. But I think about someone like that, and for whatever reason, God put wealth in her, and he's benefiting from the byproduct. In my own marriage, Angela is far beyond more successful than I am. And it doesn't hinder me, nor does it make me feel less manly, because what I've learned is she can make all this money, but I know how to use it. And so I just employ whatever it is that God has given me, and I take the wealth and I just multiply it. Even though I can easily feel, and there's been a couple of years where I feel like useless. I'm like, crap, I'm not doing anything. I've even asked her, babe, should I go get a job? Like, should I go get a real job to feel like manly?
How so many women feel, right? Like, at least the women that I've talked to feel, because they feel they're not usually paid for being caregivers. Mm-hmm. Women are naturally the caregivers. They'll stay home a bit more with the kids, right? And they're not paid for it. And then, right, the struggle. We have female friends that are moms that are like, I feel useless. I feel whatever, right? You don't have a kid, but you just described the same exact feeling. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not being productive, therefore I'm not useful. Or
I'm not a real man. Like, that's literally what I felt. Like, a couple times I'm like, man, babe, I'm sorry. If you want me to go get a real job, I'll go. And she'll be like, why? Look at all that you do. Like, you work harder than I do. You legit work harder than I do. And I don't know how I'm the one making all the money. And I'm like, well, I do work really hard. And I'm like, damn, I do. I didn't even notice that I do be working kind of hard. I just don't see anything. But at the same time, I started, and this is funny because that's why I love that I married my wife. So many things I've had to resolve in my heart. I've had to change what I thought about religion in a big way. I had to change how I felt about homosexuality in a big way. I had to change what I thought about what was really a man in a big way. And I was forced to change because her entering my life put me in situations where now I had to deal with all these ideologies that I've built up, either knowingly or unknowingly. And I was forced to tear them down because of what I was really recognizing in my life was, oh, this is what really is a man. A man is really someone who is so secure in himself that he can lift his wife as she just shines and dwarfs him, to where when he goes out, he is referred to as Angela's husband. Hey, you're Angela's husband, right? That I am. That I am. Oh, can I take a picture with you? Not because of me or any of my success, but because I am Angela's husband. And I have grown to become so proud of that, to which I'm like, this is the new man. This is the new manhood. This is the new image of my manhood. And I'm really liking it, because now there is no expectation. There is a fluidity in God is going to call me to be a different type of man in every situation or season of my life, but I'm still nonetheless a man. Right now I'm taking the backseat financially, but I'm taking the foreground on every type of investment, on every type of what are we going to do with money, which is even more important. Because any bad decision that I make, we can end up freaking broken poor. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's causing me to really think of what a real man is. And I'm honestly grateful for it.
Yeah. I'm in a not similar boat, but similar boat. Because obviously you and Ange financially are a different place than Maddie and I.
Y'all rich.
But
we not rich.
Oh, yeah. Y'all could get the large drink. I'm like, hey, what does it come with? Okay, guac is extra. No, I'm good,
No.
But, several times in our relationship, Maddie's made way more money than me. you know, and being secure and realizing that, you know, part of being a man is not necessarily the role that I'm playing, but it is the values that I think I bring to the table. It's the way that I view the world. It's the way that I'm interacting and respecting and loving other people and empowering my wife to be the strong woman that she is. And so it's been good, you know, and then I think part of the other thing too is, which there's so much toxic masculinity in the church, which is a whole nother episode. There's no way we could get into that now. But I think even in some of my deconstruction, that's been some of the thing that I've actually been deconstructing, you know, because you see just all these, it's just male pastors. Like I remember one time literally, and I apologize for this. I remember one time hearing about this church that was being pastored by just a single woman. And my first thought was, ooh, that's unhealthy. This was probably like...
That is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. No, but literally thinking like there's such this like, you know, men are supposed to be the spiritual leaders. Whew. That's like one of those messages that I was ingrained with in my early Christianity.
God, thank you for deliverance.
Which, again, obviously now that's been deconstructed. But I just think about, there's a lot of people who would feel uncomfortable with a woman pastor.
There's probably a lot of people listening right now that may be feeling a certain type of way.
The church that I'm a part of, the church that I'm on staff, Expression 58, okay? My pastor, Jen, she does majority of the speaking at our church. There have been people who have walked away simply because when they show up on a Sunday, there's a woman in the pulpit. And I'm like, you were so far behind. This was like last year. You know, you're saying, it's 2019, bruh. It's 2020 now, bruh. Like, you need to get over yourself. But I just, man, in the church, thank God that I've been delivered from that. And now I'm seeing things and I'm like, we need more women in the pulpit. Honestly, we need more female voices in the church because we've had enough of the white old guys. We're done with that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. We do.
And not that we're done. We don't dislike white old guys.
No.
But
let his critique stand, because I actually think for centuries, old white men or white men in general have always had privilege and power in order to shape the world how they see themselves or to judge other people by their experience. And so I'm not saying, or even in critiquing what you just did, I'm not saying that white men are less human.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I hate them in any way.
But I am saying we know who has held power. And so whether that's in the church, it's like, yes, God, let more women come forward. And even in our political system, God, we are overdue for women leading our political process. We were overdue in 2016. We're overdue in 2020. And that's why I have consciously made a personal vow that there are always qualified women candidates. Everyone's like, well, whoever's the most qualified. I'm like, well, women are always qualified. So that's that. So I pretty much have made a personal vow that I will only ever vote for a female president from here on out. As much as I do respect tons of men in the process. So I repped Kamala Harris. Now she's out the race. And now I'm going Liz Warren because I actually think she's the bigger adult in the room. Truthfully, not just because she's a woman, but the idea that she is a woman only helps me more because I'm like, we have constantly disenfranchised women from leadership. So the Bible says the first shall be last. So whoever's been the last, I want to put them in the first. It's their turn.
Man, we can go on and on with this. This actually got, this guy, I look down and I'm like, holy shit, we're at hours, 15, 17 minutes. This is a very good conversation.
Yeah.
And I really do hope if you're a woman, you're still listening. Because to be able to dive into the mind of a man, I feel like you would be able to assess your man more. Again, a woman who is into, who has a relationship with a man. I feel like whenever you study the opposite sex, I love watching any type of things where women are talking about how women think. Yeah. Because it really helps me find where my wife is at within that spectrum, But I'm honestly grateful that we were able to override the typical man traits that we have been thrusted into and not be afraid to dissect it and not be afraid to think that this is going to make us any less manly, So I'm super grateful. I'm grateful for you two. I learned so much from you two. It is absolutely a blessing to do life with you guys. And I am so appreciative. I feel like I learn every time. So this is one of them healthy, attractive times, guys.
y'all attracted to me.
This one of the,
I'm attracted to both of y'all, man. Y'all both good-looking individuals, man. I'm blessed to be in the group.
Same.
Hey, man.
Same.
But with that said, man, we hope you enjoyed yourself. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe, hit that bell, smash it. You know what I'm saying? Follow us, share it. We only live and breathe by y'all sharing this podcast and letting people know about it. So we appreciate you. We do got merch this season. So if you see the merch underneath, check it out. Please buy some stuff. We got to eat food. So we need that merch money. No, I'm just kidding. I love you guys so much. Hey, we pray you find a seat at the table. We genuinely do. But if you don't, you are always welcome at ours. We love you guys.
Yeah, I'm a killer, I'm a savage, I'm a fighter. See me coming, no, I cannot be denied. You can run, but yeah, I promise you can't hide. Try to cool me down, but you gon' feel the fire. They gon' try to tell me I will never make it. I've been down too many times, they celebrate it. There's a monster deep inside, you try to cage it. I'm breaking loose and it's my time, I'm gonna take it. I'ma take it, yeah, I'ma take it.
Anytime, any place, we can do this face to face. I'ma make you know my name. We're not the same. Just watch me. You can never break me down. I can go another round. Nobody gon' take the crown. We run this town. Just watch me.
Hey, lights, camera, action. I've been down, but now I'm back. All you haters just reacting. Why your boy the main attraction? Why you stuck? I keep adapting. Tell your lies, but where the facts? Call you out, I'm like, what happened? Then you ghost, I turn to pack. Man, you cannot do what I do. I am the truth. I'm never ducking the goose. Ready and willing to prove. I will abuse anyone trying to shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Miss, I got you pissed. Sorry, not sorry, I got no regrets. Yeah.